Šilerová, do you want to take over from here and we'll shift the conversation?
Yeah, we can, although any questions that come to your minds about polar bears or hydroponics, you just pipe up and we can field those too. Well, I certainly can't, but our speakers can definitely do that. I'm hoping that there are some John Abbott students in the audience, and I'm thinking that some of you may be you may have completed your university applications. You may be waiting to hear if you've been accepted to your program of choice. And so a little bit of a nerve-wracking time for you, but I was thinking that it might be interesting for those of you in that situation to hear a little bit about Megan and Vincent's journey, because they came more or less from the same, they were students of your age not that long ago. And so to hear a little bit about how they got to where they did, which is remarkable. What both of them have achieved is incredible. And not only have they achieved it in the lab or in the field or up north, but they've also been able to explain it to us very well. So I had just some questions for them, and through those questions, I will also, how does this Zoom thing work? If a person wants to ask a question, do they just lift their virtual hand? Andrew, you're going to monitor that with me, or anyone can monitor it, please. Just interrupt me if I've missed somebody's hand. But
if we get a question into the chat, then we will pass it along.
Yeah, I saw Sophia, so that was good. So chats work too, but don't be shy to unmute. Anyway, I will start. So we can start with Megan because Vincent has just finished his, he may need a drink of water or something. But first of all, Megan, I just wondered if you could share with us briefly sort of your educational background. So do you come from Quebec, or did you go to school outside of Quebec? And if so, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, sure. So I'm from the States. I actually grew up in Portland, Oregon, so like way on the other side of the continent. And for me, I think it's been interesting living in Quebec and learning about how there's high school and then CEGEP, and then CEGEP is kind of a cool system that prepares you, I think, for university. But for me, I just did tried to take advanced courses in high school to prepare me for college, and then I was undecided my first year. So bachelor's degrees in the States are generally 4 years, so you have a bit more time, I think, than some of the programs here are 4 years, some of them are 3 years. But I entered undergrad undecided, because I just knew I liked science, and I was thinking maybe like forensic anthropology. I liked a lot of the CSI shows.
Wow.
But yeah, I think it took me about a year to explore my first year of courses and talk to people. I think the biggest thing that helped me was just like networking and talking to people about my interests, and kind of letting that be a way to explore what I liked or didn't like. But yeah, so I'd switched or decided to make my degree biology with a concentration in ecological and organismal, and then basically kind of just walked through any open door that came my way. I knew I liked ecology and organisms. I knew the concept of conservation biology was really interesting to me. And I tried to get my foot in the door with research opportunities. That was a big one. I didn't really understand how research worked in college, in my first year or two of college, until I got an email from a TA, I think, that was just saying, oh, someone's looking for a lab tech volunteer. And so I just kind of took any opportunity that came my way, but slowly tried to carve a path more towards conservation biology and ecology, knowing that that was what I liked, and that I liked kind of figuring out how people kind of get answers to the science questions that pop up, and what you're learning in courses, you're like, well, how did someone find that out? And the research was the way people did it. So that was pretty much my path. And then grad school was definitely me just wanting to continue into the continue with the research, because it was something I really grew to love in my undergrad degree.
Okay, so that was my another question was, how did you always know you wanted to do research? But clearly that was something that sort of I don't know, that you found out about once you got to college, university, and then I like your bit about just going through any open door.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a lot of cool stuff going on. It's helpful to just to say yes to something to see how it goes and what you can learn from it, or what you learn. You can learn what you like and what you don't like, and both are helpful.
Right. Right. And that you're quite right. That is very important. And it's good to learn those things you don't like early on. I think that's my personal view. Anyway, Vincent, I see you nodding. What about you? Tell us how you got to where you are now.
So, but I was nodding about the open door comment, which is something that resonated in me. But yeah, so I've been born and raised in Quebec. I did high school, CEGEP. Then my first undergrad was in biology, in biochemistry. But it's funny because I was moving and I found a kind of, I don't know, like a diary, but not the diary from when I was in primary school. So I was 12 and I was really into Earth documentaries. Like my idol was Jacques Cousteau. He's a French marine biologist. So I've always been like this. I wanted to study the giant squid because no one knew about it. So that's from when I was 12. But I couldn't tell I would be a grad student when I was 28. And I did finish high school 10 years ago now. But so, okay, so undergrad in biology, and like Megan, I've had the opportunity. There was in my class, they were looking for a research assistant. And then it's the first time I had to put into practice all this. You get your statistical class, but then you get the actual experiment. Like in statistical class, they show you the results, but then when you make the results happen, so I was working with insects and we had this replica, and then I understood, oh, that's how you prove something, right? We were looking at diet and insects. So when you get this hands-on knowledge and you start to understand why you get statistical classes and why, and yeah, after my undergrad I got offered a scholarship for my master's, and then PhD. And it just happens that you talk to people and they say, oh yeah, there's this opportunity, you apply, you get it, and that's how I got here. But I have to say that I also did some formal professional internships, and I think, and I don't want to scare anyone, but I don't work well under someone else's, like 9 to 5, and having to do, like, I work on weekends because I like what I do now. But I mean, if someone would ask me to work on weekends, I would, like, it would be so. There's also this I would say this autonomy about being a grad student. You are your own boss a little bit. You just have to keep your professor happy with results. But yeah, so that's what I would say about my. But yeah, I've always been curious, and it's really when I had hands-on knowledge about research that I started. It's like a drug that you can't stop, but it's a good one, right? There are bad drugs, I guess, but yeah, that's
But we're not talking about those now.
Yeah,
No. We're just on the good ones.
yeah.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you both had kind of a different path, each of you. What I gather is you didn't know for sure from the beginning what you were doing. You talked about insects, Vincent, so that clearly wasn't, well, I mean, I guess you still have to deal with the insects in the hydroponics, right? You have to take them away or something. I don't know exactly. But that's very good. I wonder, is there someone like a teacher or maybe another type of mentor figure, Megan, that you can recall that kind of turned you on to what you're doing now, or even in a broad sense, or, I mean, you could say a polar bear too, but that's.
No, it's really like different people along the way. Like thinking back to high school teachers that got me interested in science and like the process of science, like they made their courses interesting. And then I would say for the research aspect of it, like the first opportunity I had my second year of my bachelor's, so long ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just the type of mentoring that he did was just very, like, it's intimidating to go into a new lab setting, or like kind of you're learning a lot of kind of I don't want to say stressful, but it's very like detail oriented, the kind of high pressure environments, like you don't want to mess up and it's all new and kind of overwhelming. But the mentor I had for that first lab experience like really made me feel like I was capable, even though I felt like everything was overwhelming. And I didn't understand. Sometimes I would do stuff in the lab. I'm like, I don't know what is happening when I pour this buffer into this mixture, but that's what the like protocol says to do. So like that really like they allowed for kind of dumb questions, and like that, I don't know, helped me, I think, be at that stage to know that it was okay not to know what I was doing, and that someone's there to help you.
Nice, yeah.
It was nice.
Yeah, I think those first experiences, I've seen and heard sort of everything where people also can feel so out of their depth and nervous and distressed, but all it takes is a person who knows how stressful it is and just manages to remove that stress. So that's really nice. What about you, Vincent? Did you have someone?
Yeah. So I would like, when you talked about, the first person that comes to mind is it was a CEGEP geology teacher.
Oh, nice.
And I don't know why, but she would encourage a discussion. I remember we, like in a class, she was talking about rocks, and we ended up talking about what is exobiology, or life outside of, and how we can, and that wasn't, and just I remember this teacher encouraging us to ask questions that aren't in the curriculum or something. But so this teacher, and she would talk about her research and how there was application to, finding life in the universe. She was studying sediments, or I don't remember exactly, but she was talking how, by studying sediments here on Earth, you can guess where life would be in the, in the world. So that was this geology teacher. And then I'd say like my first research assistant contract was with it was a research professional. So he wasn't a professor, but he was a very laid back, and he was patient, and that's the first research experience I've had. And I'd say this guy is would have been. So yeah, those would be the two that pops up now.
Oh, that's nice. That's good. Yeah, it's hard to know who along the way. And sometimes it's only later you think back and you realize they were really there at a very important time, or they just had the right approach at that time. So that's good. Now I'm talking a lot. Does anyone out there listening feel like ask a question? You can put it in the chat, or I think there's a virtual hand on Zoom, right? We're just kind of waiting. This is the hardest thing, isn't it, to wait for those hands in this virtual thing. In the classroom, right, you can just sort of glare out at people and then they get nervous and put their hand up. But here, that's not working for me very well, is it? Okay, well, I don't see any chats, and I presume the hand pops up if somebody asks something. Giving them a few more seconds.
I have a question going back to my presentation. I think I can quickly.
Oh, yeah, I see. Polar bear. Yeah. All right, go for it, Megan.
Yeah. So the sample sizes is something that's kind of, I didn't get a choice. I was shipped what was available. And so that's why the sample sizes are different for Beaufort Sea and East Greenland. And that's something that, at least in my area of ecology research, I think is pretty common.
Okay.
Just trying to make what you got work. And then one second. I'm not sure I understand the phrasing of that question.
I can help. So during your presentation, you were showing the sides, the comparison between the two species and how similar the broader classification of bacteria were.
Mhm.
And I was curious if that is because the prey species, even though they're eating different things, do they contain similar bacteria, or is that a different aspect?
Yeah,
or is that really
so-
what you're trying to figure out?
Yeah, I think so. You're saying that the subpopulations, when you average them all, have similar composition. And I actually haven't looked at, so the evidence of the diet differences is from other work over the last decade or so, that has led to this kind of like, we want to look into what is happening with the gut microbiome, assuming all of those dietary differences are true. But one way for us to actually be sure that diet is influencing gut bacteria is we have to measure it. So that's why I was mentioning the second part of my project will look at actually quantifying diet and then testing for associations to say more definitively. But one kind of unrelated to that, but one idea I have about why they might be so similar is that the samples were actually all collected in the spring, so March and April, before sea ice breakup really reaches its maximum extent, especially in the Beaufort Sea, which is the population that was more at risk. So my own hypothesis is that the polar bears at the time that the samples were collected likely still had both populations, they had access to seal prey for those early spring months. So maybe the diets are similar, but my diet data hopefully will tell me if that's true or not. TBD. Yeah,
actually that was I was going to kind of ask what were your immediate or even longer term plans. So, and you could, about your research or about your, depending on when you were wrapping up and so on. So you are good. You mentioned a little bit about the further studies you wanted to do, but what's sort of next on your list?
Yeah, so next on the list is I have the fatty acid. So I didn't talk about the types I'm doing 2 different types of diet analysis, and I have the data. I just need to actually analyze it and see what the bears are eating.
Right. Yeah. And that's the question was a good one then in that way. Yeah. Okay. And when will this be? When are you aiming to be finished, to graduate or?
Right. Yeah. So I'm planning to submit my thesis in August. So hopefully in the next couple of months, I'll have a better idea of that part of the project.
Okay, good. And after that, you're focusing on this one thing, I guess.
I'm not sure at the moment. I think, there's different avenues to explore, but once we kind of can see how diet relates to the gut bacteria, that question's been answered more or less.
Yes.
So maybe start looking into other opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. What about you, Vincent? You're going to start a farm?
Yeah. So, so first, the master's is what usually average 3 years. PhD is average 5 years. I'm on my 2nd year, so I should be finished in a year. No, I would hope so. A year or 2 or 3. I didn't do my proposal exam. I have to do it this summer. I have to do some replicate, but I want to say 1 year. And then when I'm done, that's the thing about I think why I'm here now as a grad student is because I've always been open to opportunities, and I feel like when I'll be done with my PhD, and I don't want to. If I'm done with my PhD, I think I'll do it, but you never know what happens. I could get an accident, but if and when I'll finish opportunities, I'd like to stay in academia. That's for sure. Being a prof seems hectic, but has kind of these challenging questions that we need to answer, because what I'm really interested in my research is quantifying the environmental impact and hopefully address policy issues in the agro-political landscape. So quantifying that, I'm not there yet, but I would like to. So academia, maybe policy making, but I have a family kind of farm stuff that I do have projects over there, but nothing that could sustain my my exquisite life. So yeah. So, but for now, yeah, academia, maybe policy. I don't know yet.
Good. Sounds great. And that'll be certainly you like working on weekends with work that you like to do. So
Yeah,
that would fit the bill.
Hopefully, yeah. Something I like to do. That's the main priority.
The main thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're both on your way to doing things that you like to do. So somebody is heading out. They thanked you both for the wonderful presentations. And yes, I think we can, I can hand it back to Andrew and to Dr. Churchill, and he can do a wrap up for us.